Happy Friday and welcome to another episode of Hornets Daily, your one-stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As always, we're presented by the good people over at FanArc, and I'm your host, Vance Ballard, but you know by now you can call me VB. Want to thank everyone for joining us today, watching along with us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and a comment down in the comments section. You know we enjoy watching you guys interact, hearing some of your thoughts on what's going on the program, and continuing to interact a little bit in the comments section as we continue to grow and build this Hornets Daily family here on the show. Now, day 3 of training camp is in the books. It is all wrapped up. We're just 2 days away from the first preseason game. We'll talk a little bit about the third day of training camp here on the show today. A defensive focus has been implemented at training camp. Charles Lee, as we know, that's his specialty. That's where he thrives. We'll talk a little bit about the team's defensive mindset coming out of training camp, going into that first preseason game. And can Pat Connaughton actually make this team? If he does make the roster, will he have an impact on the court at all? We'll discuss that a little bit today, and we'll wrap the show up talking about Liam McNeely and his role that he's going to play in his rookie season. What kind of impact will he have on the team? We'll discuss that once again to wrap the show up today. We've got just 2 days before the Hornets step onto the court and play their first preseason action. Going to be very exciting to watch them get some live reps against another team. That is going to be very exciting. You know that we don't beat around the bush here on Hornets Daily. We like to dive headfirst right into the program. That's exactly what we're going to do here. Now, the third day of training camp is in the books. It has come to an end, as we have mentioned. The vibes remain high around the Hornets building, around the Citadel campus, where the Hornets training camp is taking place. After 3 days of camp, the hype is going nowhere, ladies and gentlemen. If anything, it is only increasing. The practices seem very vocal. The intensity level is through the roof. Everyone on the court seems locked in and is bought into Charles Lee's mindset, to his system, to this culture change that the Hornets have been trying to make. We've seen video of Coach Charles Lee being very vocal with his young guys, extremely talkative. He's out engaged. He's really getting after the team at each and every practice session. And again, the intensity level has been through the roof throughout this training camp session. Again, it's still very early in the offseason. It's just 3 days into training camp again, and it is time when optimism is supposed to be high. It's supposed to be flowing through our veins. Hope is really all that we have. But this team, if I'm being honest, I've said it several times this summer, this team, this training camp, the vibes here, this just feels different. It does actually feel like the culture is starting to change. It does feel like, once again, everyone is bought in to the system that Charles Lee is trying to implement. It does feel like the talent level is different. The added depth on this roster makes it feel like things just, again, different is the only word I can think of. It's just this team feels more engaged. It does feel like a more serious time to have that culture change. It's not just we're in the rebuild, that the Hornets have been saying for the past decade. This time feels like it is actually taking hold. Forward progress is going to be made. Some interesting things were said after practice today, especially regarding rookie Ryan Kalkbrenner. Miles Bridges had some very high praise for the second-round big man, saying, quote, "I love playing with Ryan." He complimented his maturity level, his defensive ability, saying that he blocks every shot. And he went on to say that he thinks Kalkbrenner will be great in this league. Again, a very high praise coming from a guy we said could be a veteran leader on this team going forwards. So if you have a guy like Miles Bridges in your corner as a rookie, it means good things for Ryan Kalkbrenner. He has impressed. He has shown that he has developed. He is taking those steps to become an NBA center and adapt to the NBA style of game. I also found it very interesting that he was teamed up in a scrimmage at training camp with Miles Bridges, LaMelo Ball, and Brandon Miller, so it could maybe see him playing more with that unit than we originally anticipated. I'm not saying he's going to be the opening night starter, but if he's out there getting reps with three guys who we know will be starting, it could again mean he's going to get some more run with that unit overall, and that could go a long way, allowing Musa to play the 4 with that team or with that lineup, making them a little more athletic at that spot and allowing for the defense and the rebounding to really take a step forwards with Kalkbrenner and Diabate on the floor at the same time. Again, we're not saying Kalkbrenner is going to start on opening night, but he has been receiving some high praise, has been getting some love from all around, especially guys like Miles Bridges, who have enjoyed watching him play so far. We've seen him catch alley-oops. We've seen him running the high pick and roll. He looks good. He's moving well. Kalkbrenner is maybe a couple steps ahead of where we thought he would be as a fan base going into originally coming into training camp, and we'll see on Sunday how he looks in live game action. That too is going to be something very interesting to keep an eye on. Now, something else coming out of day 3 of training camp was an increased talk and focus on defense. In his press conference today, or in his talks with the media yesterday, Charles Lee said the team needed to continue to establish a defensive mindset, adding, quote, "That's the way to my heart." Now, that's something we're all aware of. We knew that when Charles Lee was brought into Charlotte that his mindset towards defense was part of the reason. That's his specialty. That's where he thrives. That's what he's best at. And that's what, again, he holds nearest and dearest to his heart. He hopes that the team can be more intense this year on that end of the floor, can perform a little better defensively, and utilize the defensive end of the floor to create more transition possessions to help the offense increase that pace that we've been talking so heavily about the first 2 days of training camp and really all summer long leading into it as well. He said the one-on-one matchup is where their defense starts, and they've put an overemphasis on that technique as well as shift activity when getting into the half court. So it's going to be imperative for the team to buy in, against something I think everyone is having no problems doing, but it's going to be imperative that they buy into Charles Lee's mindset. They work together with that shift activity in the pick and rolls. They work together to develop communication with the guys in the paint. That's something he talked about yesterday as well. Charles Lee said, quote, "As long as we are sticking and committing to one another on that end of the floor, we have the capable talent to guard people at a high level." Now, that was, of course, in reference to the team's overall defensive potential and what he thinks this unit can do as a whole, no matter who the 5 guys are on the floor. Lee did get a little bit coach speaky when talking about the center position. That comes as no surprise, as that's still the position that has the most questions surrounding it, still the least understood position going at this point in the offseason. But he did say that communication was going to be key. Once again, running no matter who which one of the 3 centers is on the floor, Musa, Kalkbrenner, Mason Plumlee, it doesn't matter. Communication running through those guys and helping them, talking in the switch, talking in the pick and roll is going to be vital no matter which one of those 3 guys are playing at that center position. Once again, defense is Charles Lee's baby, and I think that this version of the Hornets is very well suited to play up to his standard on that end of the floor. He's coming in now after finally having some time, having a relatively full, healthy roster. Grant Williams and Josh Green obviously still out, but it is the majority of the roster is healthy. They can get together. They can start to really work on Charles Lee's defensive system, as he's got his pieces in place that he wants to utilize to create that defensive system. And again, going forward, using defense to turn it into offense, capitalize on those transition possessions, and score more points, pick up that pace a little bit. Again, that's going to be the key focus of the offensive side of the ball, somewhere that we know the Hornets struggled mightily last year. Switching gears a little bit here, will Pat Connaughton actually make this roster? It's been a question for a while now whether or not he will actually be a Hornet this season. As we know, the Hornets still need to make one more roster move to get that number of guys under contract down from 16 to the magical number of 15. And moving on from Pat Connaughton, realistically, when you look at it up and down, makes the most sense. He's a new guy who may or may not even have a role in the rotation when it comes to on-the-court impact. we're not even sure if there's really going to be room for a guy like Pat Connaughton. He's an aging player whose best days are obviously behind him. He's coming into more of his more veteran years on the team, and he plays a position that, quite frankly, the Hornets are very deep at right now. There's a mix of 2 and 3s on this Hornets roster already. Connaughton would be way down the list of guys you would get to when you, in terms of who you want to actually put on the court when looking at that roster on paper. But there is still more than one reason to keep him around if we're looking at it from that perspective as well. Despite being an aging player, despite being past his prime, despite his best days being behind him, like I said, he is a veteran in the league who has an NBA championship under his belt. He's played winning basketball. He's played a lot of playoff basketball. He understands how to win in the NBA, and I think that is something that the Hornets desperately need right now, especially with such a young core, especially with such an inexperienced core. Not a lot of guys on this Hornets roster have playoff experience, much less deep playoff experience. So having a guy like Pat Connaughton, who's been around for those deep playoff runs, who's been around for a championship parade, who has a ring, who understands what it's like, what it feels like to win in the NBA, keeping that guy around and just having him be in the locker room, be a motivator, be a leader for some of these young guys who don't have that experience, that could go a long way for a young team like the Hornets. Pat Connaughton also has experience with Charles Lee. He's familiar with Coach Lee as their paths crossed during Charles Lee's time in Milwaukee, so they have been together. Connaughton has a bit of a deeper understanding where Charles Lee comes from, where his system started to take its roots, and kind of they've kind of grown and developed, not necessarily together as the last 2 years they haven't been, but Pat Connaughton understands the makings of Charles Lee, and so maybe he can kind of communicate that on a bit of a deeper level with some of those other young guys in the locker room. Quote, Charles Lee said when asked about Pat Connaughton, quote, the expectation for him is to come in and be a pro. Now, that is something that he thinks is going to be easily done. He knows Pat Connaughton on a personal level. He knows his experience in the NBA. He understands that he's a veteran and can come in and do just that, be a professional, and really show the young guys how to be a professional. Now, most of what Pat Connaughton would offer this team comes in an off-the-court role, in a locker room leadership guy, in a veteran voice type role. But he can contribute between the lines as well. Let's not undersell Pat by any means. He's not in his prime. He's a bit past that. He's not necessarily a freak athlete by any means anymore, but he's a lethal shooter, and that part of his game has not left him yet. He's still shooting at a high percentage and would be one of the better shooters on this Hornets roster pretty much instantly when he was on the court, if he is run out there. Even in his older years as well, he's also still competent on the defensive end. He did not, the production for Milwaukee did not take a hit on the defensive end of the floor when he was in the game last year. So that's something he's capable of doing. Again, probably not a 30-minute-a-night type of guy, but that's not the role he'd have to fill. Even if he does make the roster, things would have to go really, really badly for Connaughton to be relied on that heavily. So I don't think that's necessarily going to have to be the concern. But if he does make the final roster, having a guy like Connaughton around could go a really long ways in terms of the question we asked yesterday, who would be filling that more old head or unk type of role, where Trey Mann suggested it would be Miles Bridges. If Connaughton does make the roster and it has time to develop that relationship with the young guys around him, develop some chemistry with his new team, then he absolutely would slide into that veteran leadership role, that more guy who doesn't play a lot, the Udonis Haslem type, doesn't play a whole lot, but when he talks, you listen because his experiences in the league are that strong, they're that impactful, and he's been around the block much like Connaughton has, and so he could really go a long ways towards helping the young group develop just in their off the court professionalism as well as on the court. Again, he's not would not cause production to take a hit if Connaughton did have to come in and play some serious minutes. Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is a guy who comes into this season pretty assured he's going to make the roster, but whose game is a lot less understood, a lot less known what we're going to get from him when he is on the floor. And that guy, of course, is Liam McNeely. I told you we're going to wrap the show up talking a little bit about Liam and his role that he's going to play in his rookie year. Liam is someone we've talked quite a bit about already this summer. I've told you that I'm very high on him. I've pitched out the idea of him maybe forcing himself not necessarily into someone who can win the Rookie of the Year award, but definitely into the conversation for it. I think he's got that level of talent. I think he's got that level of potential. I think he could make that high of an impact on this Hornets roster this season. Now, during the first few days of camp, Liam is going. The role that he's going to actually play is started to become a little bit more clear. When asked about his role, Liam said, quote, "Coach Lee has told me that he wants me to be a connector and very vocal, just kind of a glue guy that can do a bunch of different things on the court," was the direct quote from McNeely himself, again, when asked about his role going forwards in his rookie season. Now, this type of role, this type of player is familiar territory for the young wing. It's essentially his role from his high school days. Now, I know that may sound crazy when you're talking about an NBA player's high school days, but that was just 2 seasons ago for Liam McNeely. Stop with Danny Hurley's UConn team in between. But it is a familiar role. It's something he did in his high school days, playing alongside number 1 draft pick Cooper Flagg at Montverde Academy. So the Hornets, they're going to try and get him in a more familiar role as a rookie, get him to do some things he is capable of doing, some things he knows he understands doing on the basketball court. And Charlotte is desperately in need of that glue guy type role who can come off the bench, do some of the dirty work, rebound on both ends of the floor, play good tight defense on the perimeter, guard a bigger guy if necessary. Liam McNeely can do all of these things in his rookie season at a very young age. He can also be a playmaker on the ball. He can bring it up if need be. He can be that primary ball handler. He can use his vision, his basketball IQ. Again, that's not necessarily the role he's going to be asked to play, but if he does have to do it, he's got that in his bag as well. As I've said, I don't think the expectations for Liam are going to be very high. They're not going to be crazy. He's not going to be expected to come in and be the sixth man, be the 15, 20-minute a night guy off the bench right away. Now, he could easily play his way into that role, and I don't think that the expectations are even as high for Liam as they should be. I'm a little higher on Liam McNeely than most. I think he's going to be a fantastic asset. I think he's going to play a big impact even in his rookie year for the Charlotte Hornets, but having him understand what his role is right now in the early goings already this soon into training camp, having him have that in his mind and not be questioning what his role is, not be going out there confused and trying to develop a role on the go, having him step onto the court immediately knowing what his job is and what he needs to do while out on the floor is going to go a long way for the rookie. It's going to make him that much better in his rookie season, and I think it'll make his impact felt that much more. Again, that's something we'll start to see unfold on Sunday. As I've mentioned, the Hornets are just 2 days away from their first preseason game. That's something we're going to be talking about on our next episode of Hornets Daily, which will be taking place right here going live right here on Monday. That's going to do it for today's show. However, folks, have a safe weekend. As always, thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you think going into the first preseason game. Again, we'll break it all down on Monday's episode of